Hi, my name is Pietro Pugni and I'm from Milan, Italy. The topic I've chosen for the assignment is about recording acoustic instruments. I'll try to be more clear, correct, focused and synthetic as possible, considering that my native language isn't English. I'll focus on how the different kind of instruments have different timbres, different dynamic ranges, and consequently what kind of microphone is best suited to record them. First of all, every acoustic instrument is made of a resonant body. To make it sound, we have to transfer a kinetic energy from an energy generator to a sound emitter. The sound emitter propagates that energy through a medium, for example the air, so that the air molecules start to vibrate and to propagate in the environment. When they reach our ears, the ear organs and the brain transduce those vibrations into what we call sound. The energy generator and the sound emitter, combined with the resonant body and the ambience in which the instrument is placed, determine the timbre, the dynamic range, the envelope and the spatial image of the sound. The dynamic range is the interval between the maximum and the minimum sound pressure level generated by the instrument. The timbre is the quality of the sound and is determined by the richness of frequencies generated by the instrument. The envelope is the amplitude variations of sound over time. The spatial image is what we perceive as the stereo sound, and it's determined by the differences in time and amplitude from what we hear from the left and the right ear. In addition, our crane operates as a filter, so what we hear from various directions differs in timbre if we change position. To make the things more complicated, we must consider also the dynamics of the player. In fact, each instrument can be played in different ways. To better explain this, I'll reproduce a short sample I've recorded with my equipment. And now I show you my home recording equipment I've used to record the audio in this assignment. This is a PreSonus 5 Studio Mobile AD interface. It has two microphone instrument inputs. You can see a combined connector with an XLR and TS input. This cable is an XLR cable that is connected to a microphone. This is a very cheap dynamic microphone from Behringer I use for voice. It's an XM8500 model with a cardioid pattern. I mount it to show you just for curiosity. The microphone is mounted on a clip, which is mounted on a microphone stand that can reach about 2 meters in height. As condenser microphones, I use these cheap microphones. They always from Behringer, but they have an incredibly quality level for what they cost. They have a cardioid pattern and a switch here, which in the first position doesn't anything. In the second position operates like a high-pass filter, and the third position it attenuates of 10 decibel the signal level from the microphone. Here we have an XLR connector. I'll show you the capsule. You can see that it's different from the dynamic microphone, and it's more delicate and sensible, so you don't have to generate shocks on this kind of microphones. And here's a stereo attachment for these two microphones. They are stereo balanced. This means that they were calibrated to get the same response frequency, and they can be mounted on this clip, which permits you to orientate them in the way you want. in order to record a stereo signal. I'll show you the preamp section of my AD interface. You can activate and deactivate the phantom power. These knobs regulate the gain stage level of the respective two inputs. This is the phone output knob, which regulates the amount level of the signal going into my headphones, which are a very old Pioneer model, SE2 model. Then I have a main output knob level here. The main output is composed by these two outputs. They are TRS output, so they are balanced. They generate balanced signals, and I connected two unbalanced cable because this cable has 1/4 inch connector on one side and two RCA connectors on the other side, in order to connect it to this adapter, which converted from RCA connectors to a mini jack connector that goes into the mini jack unbalanced input audio of my MacBook Pro, on which I run my DAW software. The computer generates the sound captured from the microphone and generated from the tracks. They go out through the firewire cable. They go into the firewire interface. Then the audio signal is sent through the main output cable into the audio input input of my MacBook Pro, and then QuickTime will record this signal. What you see here is a sonogram with inverted axes. Time is on the vertical axis and frequencies are on the horizontal axis. In Studio One, this diagram is called waterfall. On the bottom, there's the instant spectrogram of the signal. I've recorded a Tibetan bell, which is played by rotating at a certain speed a rigid body around the top border of the bell. Doing so, you make the bell reaching its resonant frequency. From the sonogram, you can clearly see that when I stop the rotating stick, there remains only one frequency here at about 665 Hz, and a very low amplitude overtone at about 1330 Hz here. This is the first overtone. When the sound decays, the overtone lowers in amplitude and remains only the fundamental frequency. You can see this here. Here we have the fundamental frequency, and the overtone disappeared. Overtones. When the sound decays, the overtone lowers in amplitude and remains only the fundamental frequency, obtaining a kind of sine wave sound, because a sine wave has no overtones. Overtones are also called harmonics, and they are multiple of the fundamental frequency. Okay, if I hit the bell, I get a completely different sound. There is the previous frequency, but now appeared different other fundamental frequency here, here, and here. Each one of these fundamental frequency has its related overtone series. It's not so simple to distinguish them, but if you multiply every fundamental frequency by an integer value, you get the overtones, and every overtone series of every fundamental frequency overlaps with the other overtones series. Also, if you look at the hit instant here, you see nothing else that the noise. Noise is generated by a lot of frequencies of equal amplitude over a consistent frequency range. When generating sound in a percussive way, you always generate that kind of noise which persists for a few milliseconds. You can see here the duration is very, very short. This period of time is called attack, and it varies also from different kind of percussive instruments. Now I'll go further inside this topic, showing you other examples of timbres. I've downloaded various samples from freesound.org, and the first I'll play is a clave sound. Okay, you get a very fast attack. You can see it from the sound waveform. There's also a very fast decay here, and one fundamental frequency here, like an impulse wave. However, if you hit the clave in a different way, you get a different sound, exactly like the Tibetan bell. You can see it here. Okay, in this sample, you can see that the final hit here generate 3 different frequencies, here, here, and here. And the rattle sound here is assimilable to a noise sound. The whole range of the frequencies generated by this clave is between 1000 Hertz and 10,000 Hertz about. A very, very limited frequency range. So for an instrument like a clave, you can use both a condenser and a dynamic microphone, because you don't have a very high SPL, but also you don't generate a lot of harmonics, so you get a poor timbre. However, the envelope is very fast, both in attack and in decay time, so you may want to use a condenser microphone, because it's more sensitive and reacts faster than a dynamic to sound pressure variations. The next sample is a hit over a snare drum head. Okay, this is very interesting because you have the noise sound of the hit instant here. This is the hit instant, the attack time. But also you get the resonant frequency of the drum body, which generates a lot of harmonics. The resonant frequency probably is around this range, and the harmonics are those lines here. You can see them here. Those frequencies are the harmonics of the resonant body of the snare drum. Those harmonics have a decay time longer than the hitting sound, so at the end of the hit you can clearly hear only harmonics. The snare drum is one of the most colored parts of the drum kit, because it generates mid-frequencies that we can easily perceive. Those harmonics make a snare drum very different from the other snares. Just for completeness, here is a sample of a rim shot played over the same snare drum. You can hear very few harmonics because of the few amount of energy transferred from the metal rim to the drum body, and see the noise instant of the hit. So it's more noise than other. And the next sample is a kick drum, and we expect the same behavior as the snare. However, on a kick drum we can easily perceive the lowest harmonics because it requires a lot of kinetic energy to move the amount of air inside let's say 20 inches diameter kick drum. In fact, this is easier to accomplish with a snare drum because the diameter is about 14 inches. These are the harmonics who aren't so accentuated. You can see them here. In the end, look at the waveform, also called oscilloscope. You see how this sound wave here has a very low frequency compared to the other sound waves. The rim shot, the snare drum, the clave. Dynamic microphones are used to record drums because of the high SPL they can reach, and the fact that if you place a microphone far from the source to prevent the proximity effect of the high SPL on the lower frequencies, the microphone couldn't perceive the harmonics generated by the drums. So you have to use a microphone with a high dynamic range built with high quality components. So until now I've told you about percussive instruments. There are also not percussive instruments that are percussive but behaves in a non-percussive way. Remember that a percussive instrument tends to have a high SPL and a fast attack, while a non-percussive instrument tends to have a lower SPL and a slower attack. I recorded a sample of an acoustic guitar note. You can hear it. Okay, as you can see, the sound wave has a very long sustain on the fundamental frequency and on the overtones here. And the attack is much longer compared to the clave attack, even if I percussed the string. You can see it here. Here's the transient, but then it reaches an higher amplitude here and slowly decays. This is due to the nature of the vibrating string, which reaches its maximum amplitude after some milliseconds. As I play the note, I get the fundamental frequency here, which is about 260 Hz, a C4 note, and all its overtones, 2 per 260 Hz, 3 per 260 Hz, and so on. What we have here on the left of the sonogram here is the, let's call it, shadow of the resonant frequency of my guitar. However, its amplitude is too low and it didn't generate a significantly perceived overtone series. Let's see what happens if I play a series of notes on the guitar, in this case a C major scale. Okay, the resonant frequency, 98 Hz here, it's around here, is a G2 note, gets more loud, and you can see its first overtone at 2 per 98 Hz. Where is it? Here. It's about 160 Hz. And this is a G3 note. The other frequencies are simply the notes I play with their relative overtone series. Here is the fundamental of the note I play with the overtone series here. To make you believe me about the resonant aspect of an acoustic instrument, I recorded a sample where I hit the body of my guitar, keeping the strings quiet. That frequency, which is about 98 Hz, is the resonant frequency. Okay. So in order to record a string instrument, you have to choose a condenser microphone with a large diaphragm to get all the articulation in timbre without worrying about SPL. With an exception, violins get a very high amplitude on high notes, so you have to be careful to find the right compromise between a gain stage level of the microphone and the distance from the microphone. I'll play for you some violin sample downloaded from freesound.org. Okay, this is a C6 note played with its overtone series, and there's nothing strange here. You can see the overtones here. But look at this. The note played here is an A3 note, but the first overtone here is much more loud in amplitude. The second is less louder, the third gets again louder here, and so the fourth. Then the other overtones begin to decrease in amplitude. This is common in every acoustic instrument, but is very evident in violin instruments. That's what makes a Stradivari an exceptional and unique violin, and it's timbre. The next sample is also interesting. This is a violin staccato. It shows you how an instrument like a violin can vary the envelope of the sound it generates. You can see it here. The attack is faster than the previous sample, and so the decay. Now I'll play a vibrato violin note. The vibrato consists on little changes in pitch, and it's quite clear on the sonogram. You can see these variations, these ondulations on both the fundamental and the overtone series. Okay, the next category of instrument I'll cover is a mix between percussive and non-percussive instruments, and they are plates. Plates are in some way the most fascinating instruments because they can generate a lot of different sounds. They can be played on the bell, on the surface, on the border. They can oscillate at different speeds, creating vortices in the air around them. They have surfaces treated in different ways and changes their resonant behavior if played repeatedly with varying intensity. The most important thing to keep in mind is that noise generated by the hit gets sustained for a long time if the plate is free to oscillate. there are different types of plates. They're called splash, crash, ride, china, and hi-hat or charleston. Plate has a bell, and that bell makes a particular sound. Here is a ride played with a low intensity. Ride is always low in amplitude because of its diameter. It resonates at lowest frequencies than the other plates, so you have to transfer more energy to the hit in order to get the same amplitude of the other plates. And here's the bell sound of the same ride. You can hear highest frequencies, which are emphasized by the bell shape, which has a more brilliant sound. Its resonant frequency is higher than the whole plate resonant frequency. Listen to this splash. Splashes are very brilliant. You can see that the highest frequency have a much more high amplitude here. A more high amplitude compared to the ride. There are also many harmonics with a slow decay. You can see them here. Those. Let's play a closed hi-hat. It's very similar to a noise sound. You can see it here. It's difficult to identify its resonant frequency. Probably it's this, but you can see that there's more noise than a melodic sound. For all these plates, you surely notice that they cover the mid and high frequencies and don't necessarily have a high SPL. But when a drummer gets into the right mood, he starts to play very hard. The best choice is a condenser microphone. Also, you would like to recreate this spatial image of the sound, so you have to use at least 2 microphones to record the plates in an overhead position. They are placed at around 2 meters from the ground on the left and on the right of the drummer. Because they are condenser microphone with a cardioid or hypercardioid pattern, they capture the parts of the whole drum kit on which they are oriented, and you can place them far from the place without damaging the diaphragm due to the high SPL the plates can reach. The last category of instruments you can record is the wind instruments. They are capable of long sustain, quite slow attack, and discrete SPL. You can use condenser microphone if you place them on a microphone stand, or a dynamic microphone if you place the microphone on the hole of the instrument where the air flows. In that position, you must take in account the proximity effect, so a dynamic microphone is better suited because of the highest SPL of flow and low mid-frequency. Here's the sonogram of a major chord played by different brass instruments. The highest frequencies of these brass instruments are insignificant, but you can get flutes that reach those frequencies on the overtone series. So a condenser microphone is the best choice if you want to record an ensemble of wind instruments. You must capture the whole frequency spectrum. So if you have to record an acoustic instrument, you must know its spectrum or timbre, its dynamic range, its dynamics in the sense of how many sounds you can get from that instrument, and the spatial propagation of the sound. For the spatial image, you may use more than one microphone placed around the space if you want to recreate a surround effect, or over imaginary line if you want to recreate a stereo image. In a studio you usually have a good insonorization, but you can't ignore the polar pattern of the microphone. The polar pattern, which is a representation of the sensitivity of the microphone to the sound, in relation to its central axis, permits to capture directional sounds or omnidirectional sounds. With cardioid, hypercardioid, supercardioid and shotgun diagrams, you get a directional capture of the sound, rejecting much of the ambient sound, while with omnidirectional or subcardioid, you get a lot of sound from the ambience, and with 8 diagram you reject only the sides from the microphone. Usually microphones have a pad switch used to attenuate the signal and a high-pass filter switch. These switches are much more useful in live situations than in a studio, because there the ambience is much more rumorous. To record the instrument, you must connect your microphone to a microphone preamplifier. If you have a condenser microphone, then you have to use a phantom power, otherwise no phantom power is required. From the microphone preamplifier, you have to go to an AD interface, which generally has at least one microphone preamplifier built in. Between the microphone preamplifier and the AD interface, you can connect various signal processors which manipulate this signal in order to make it sound better. There are compressors, reverber units, delay units, equalizers, and so on. You can also have a mixer connected before the AD interface in order to have a better control of the various AU signals in the studio. Finally, you have to connect your AD interface to a computer running a DAW in order to record your track. I hope you enjoyed this assignment. I'm very excited by this course because these kind of assignments are very stimulating, and it's the first time I record a video in which I'm speaking in English. I know I haven't covered all the topics, but I prefer to concentrate on illustrating the different sounds you can get from the various acoustic instruments in order to understand why a certain microphone is preferred to another. If you found any errors, please correct me because I'm here to learn. And many thanks goes to the Coursera team, to Berklee College of Music, and of course to Loudon Stearns. See you next assignment. Bye!